guys? It's your boy GS Luke here for our DFS core picks at the Farmers Insurance Open. Here in this video, we're going to cover my top 6 core plays for this week's event, one in each price range that I'll be using as foundational pieces in my player pool to help build around. We're going over one guy in each price range to give you a complete idea of what my player pool is going to look like. And again, these aren't locks for this week, but they're definitely the plays that I have the most conviction in. A little review of last week before we hop into the picks here. Last week, Hudson Swafford shocked the world, got his biannual win, pretty much gets one every 150 starts or so, and good for him. It's 2 wins in the last year and a half for Swafford. By far the most impressive stretch that he's had for his career. It was a sneaky pick, right? Not a lot of people out there had him. I was very adamant on the channel here that I thought somebody 151 or higher would come home and end up winning this thing. Unfortunately, weren't able to be lucky enough to get a ticket on Swafford, but congrats to all the backers out there. On the DFS side for us, it was a very hit or miss week. Our core picks had some nice plays like a Patrick Cantlay, Patrick Rogers, also somebody like Cameron Young who got off to that torrent start, but also had some flubs like a Matthew Wolff, Gary Woodland, and Johnny Vegas who ended up missing the cut. So some good picks there, some bad picks. Definitely a lot of room for improvement there. Our value picks were a lot better though. We had standout plays like Davis Riley, Cameron Young, Theegala, Taylor Pendrith as well, and even Willie Z as one of our sleeper picks and an outright for a top 10 ended up coming through for us as well. So overall, ended up being a slightly negative week, both on the DFS side and the outright side, which again, not really the best. We've been on quite a heater here of late. I've had 3 of the last 4 weeks being profitable here, but you're going to take one on the chin every once in a while. And for us to only be slightly negative this week, yet having guys like Wolff, Woodland, and Vegas in the player pool, and pretty significant exposure rates as well, is going to be at least somewhat of a consolation. This week's Farmers Insurance Open going to be a much more predictable event. Last week, you guys saw John Rahm coming off a green, yelling and pouting about how it was a quote-unquote putting fest. And of course, it took some of the colorful language out of there. He was not enjoying the conditions whatsoever. And the reason why he doesn't enjoy them is it's a putting fest, right? You can hit array shots, get away with some of those putts there, and the best player doesn't always win those golf tournaments. This time around over here at Torrey Pines, one of the most iconic venues in all of the PGA Tour, we get a course that has been very reliable over the years for the type of winner we see here. There's statistical profiles that tend to succeed here, whether it's the North or the South course, and we've seen that be relatively consistent over the years. So looking forward to that. A much more quote-unquote true test of golf this week where ball striking is going to be king. And of course, we get the POA Nua greens, which make this event just a little bit unique. Definitely a week for the stat guys, one that we can look to take advantage of here and try to bring home some profit. So with all of that nonsense out of the way, now that we're at a much better tour event, something that's a little bit more predictable, let's get right on into it. All right, guys, on the screen, you guys can see our projections for this week. We're going to go ahead and start off with a review of the key stats, though. If you guys haven't already seen my full course breakdown, that is already up on the channel. I will put a link down in the description for that. I go over both Torrey Pines North and South, South being the main course for this week where we'll be at for 3 rounds, giving you guys a complete breakdown of what to expect. But a quick review here, the South course, which is just a little bit more difficult. You're looking for guys that are prolific ball strikers. It's nearly 7,800 yards. You're going to be hitting long irons in almost every single hole, and hitting high long irons, not just long irons in general, is going to be a key. The greens here are also extremely firm and fast, so only the best iron players are going to hit 60-70% of greens this week, and those are going to very likely be the guys at the top of the leaderboard. Next up, we have shots gained around the green. You can see that shots gained putting also important at this golf course. Because it's so long, because you're going to have so many long irons in your hands going into these greens, you're going to be missing plenty of them as well. Your dispersion with some of those long irons is much higher than what you have with some of these short irons and wedges. So as a result, the ability to get up and down will also be important. And you can also see that encapsulated over there with scrambling. But now for the North course, much more scoreable. First and foremost, only rate around 7,300 yards, also dealing with much larger fairways and greens. So not a surprise to see that birdie or better percentage, something that we're taking a look at the North course rather than the South course. Approach play, going to be important no matter where you're at, so not a surprise to see that at number 1. But putting, just a little bit more emphasized here at the North Course. You really got to try and take it to 6, 7 under par, especially if we get some benign conditions. This is really where you're going to differentiate yourself from the field. At the South Course, due to its difficulty, your ceiling is probably a 6, maybe a 7 under round if you're lucky. There's definitely 9, 10 under rounds out there at the North Course, particularly if we get some soft greens. And lastly, we'd say par 5 scoring. The par 5s at the North Course are definitely gettable. You have some large fairways, also relatively large greens that players are going to be able to stop some of their long irons on. So you're looking at some more eagle looks for players in the field. Overall, though, we are looking for ball strikers. This is Torrey Pines. It is a major championship type of venue, but you're really going to see the cream rise to the top. And that's the statistical profile of most of these big golf courses, is you're really trying to take guys that can hit it long and, of course, are on with their approach play. Now, with that being said, let's get right into the core picks. Up top for our spend up option, we are going to have Justin Thomas at $10,900. He's somebody who comes in as a top 10 course fit ranking. You can see him there at number 7, and that's despite not having his best play of late. Ran these metrics for over the last 50 measured rounds, and over that stretch, JT has not been the top 5 player that we're used to seeing. Just a much better ball striker historically, and the putter has really gone atrocious. The thing that's really looking up for Justin Thomas, though, is of late, the putter's starting to turn, and the ball striking looks exactly like it did in the past. He's really starting to come into his own. That's why he's top 20 in the field in recent form ranking. That is just over the last 24 measured rounds. Has seen significant improvement from what we saw, especially towards the middle of 2021. Let's go ahead and hop into some of the shots gained metrics, just to give you an idea of why I like him so much this week. The approach play, exactly what we expect from a JT, nearly half a stroke gained per round, but the putting, only losing 0.1 strokes per round, that is much better than what we saw for most of 2021. He was one of the worst putters on the PGA Tour. He was the worst putter of anyone in the top 25 of the official World Golf rankings, but you can see on POA for his career, he's a gainer. It's his best surface. He gains a quarter of a stroke per round. Now, something that we talked about during the course breakdown, I'm already up on the channel, was that Poa Nua, very difficult to putt on. It's one of those surfaces where you deal with a lot of volatility. The ball will bounce left to right very often. And the more aggressive putters, the people that quite frankly just aren't the best putters on tour, tend to do a little bit better on POA. They get it to the hole. That's really the key on POA, is because of all those left-right bounces, you tend to leave quite a few putts short. But Justin Thomas, an extremely aggressive putter, he always has been, tends to make a few more on this surface. So there could be something there. A lot of the putts that he's typically leaving 3 to 4 feet past the hole sometimes only end up 2 to 3 feet because of that left to right motion as well. So Justin Thomas has had some great vibes at this golf course. Unfortunately, hasn't played the Farmers since 2015. So course history, not reliable. Haven't seen him for over 6 years. He also played in 2014. And over there at Pebble Beach, he hasn't played very much either. So the sample size for the putting isn't massive, but anytime we've seen him on POA, this has been his best surface on tour. It's right around 40 measured rounds for him. Even though he hasn't played those golf tournaments very much, a lot of the majors, a lot of random events here and there on the PGA Tour are played on courses with Poa Nua, but it really is just Pebble Beach and of course Torrey Pines that are the mainstays that have just pure Poa greens. Overall, though, his off-the-tee play, exactly what we're looking for. He has that distance and accuracy that is such a rare combination on the PGA Tour, much like a Jon Rahm. You see Rahm gaining 0.6 shots gained off the tee per round, so certainly there are levels to this game. It's not like Jon Rahm isn't a play for me. He's my favorite play on the slate. If we go back over here to the Draftkings projections, you can see he's number 1 in recent form, number 1 in course fit, and of course, my highest projected player for the field. But I'm trying to give you guys maybe slightly more unique plays here, right? Everyone knows to go out and play Jon Rahm this week. I'm going to have my fair share there. But Justin Thomas, the second most expensive player on the field, I expect him to be a little bit overlooked, right? People are going to be a little bit more willing to spend down for this lower end of the 10K range, or of course, just go ahead and try and lock in a Jon Rahm. But if Justin Thomas can go out, gain strokes on the greens putting like he has for his career, he's going to have a massive week. When Justin Thomas gains strokes on the greens, he wins almost every single time. And if he's going to gain for his career historically here, I know we haven't seen him on these greens for quite some time. That is extremely intriguing to me. So I'm hoping he comes in at less than 20% ownership. If he does, going to be one of my favorite plays on the slate, regardless of price. I'll remind you guys that these projections on the screen are of course available on my Patreon page 24/7. I'm constantly updating them with the latest ownership numbers, any changes due to the weather that you may see from round to round on the course. And if you want direct access to the metrics, to go ahead and use them in your own crunches, your own optimizers, make sure you guys take advantage of that. A link will be down in the description for that. Just $1 for the month for golf. You're not going to find a better value across the industry. But next up, our next core play is going to be Sam Burns at $9,700. Our second man in for this event. He comes in as a top 3 recent form rank and course fit rank, also a bomber much like JT, but with Sam Burns, you also get a very solid putter. You can see on Poa gaining nearly 0.4 strokes per round on the surface, and that's not even his best surface. He's better on Bermuda grass, where he gains nearly 3/4 of a stroke per round, one of the elite players in the world, but it's nice to see that even on Poa, seems to have that magic touch. But go over to the shots gained metrics for Sam Burns. You can see that much like Justin Thomas has been absolutely striping it. Of the guys in the elite tier range, only trails Daniel Berger for shots gained approach, gaining over 0.7 strokes gained per round. Off the tee has also been immaculate. I mean, he's long off the tee, he's accurate, exactly what we're looking for here at Torrey Pines. That's not only one of the longer courses on the PGA Tour, you're also dealing with that gnarly Kikuyu rough. In terms of the putting over the last 24 measured rounds, hasn't quite been up to industry standards for Sam Burns, but again, historically been better on Poa, so could see a little bit of positive regression. Moving into some of the advanced metrics here for Sam Burns, you see he's top 5 in the world in birdie or better percentage, which is obviously going to be useful there on the North course. We already identified birdie or better percentage as one of the key stats there. Par 5 scoring, also top 25 in the world. That'll be particularly useful at the North course. And if we take a look at the approach play, where he's really separated himself is in that wedge range. And I know Sam Burns gets a little bit of a knack for not being a very good around the green player. His wedges haven't been quite as good as some of the other parts of his game, but to see him having success from 50 to 125 yards, that's showing me that he's making a ton of strides in that category. Sure, around the green is from 50 yards in, but to see some of those touch shots from 50 to 125 yards end up getting close for Sam Burns isn't something that we've seen from him before. So if he's getting better with some of those field shots, I do expect the around the green stats and the scrambling stats to follow as well. Overall, Sam Burns likely to be a little bit less owned this week than he should be as well. He's got guys like Brooks Koepka sandwiched between him, Bryson DeChambeau, Daniel Berger, who's likely to be one of the chalkier options on the slate. So not only is he giving us an elite course fit, elite recent form, somebody who's shown himself to be a winner over the last few months, he's also going to be a little bit of ownership leverage. So love him there at $9,700. Even if he comes in a little bit chalky this week, probably chalk worth eating. Just an immaculate course fit, great on Poa, and last year was in the final group of this golf tournament. Was matched up with Patrick Reed, was starting one shot back. So he was very live to go out there and compete. Unfortunately, got off to a horrid start on Sunday. Really played himself out of contention in those first 2 or 3 holes and really didn't see him on the telecast after that. They started ignoring him. Obviously, ever since that golf tournament has started to compete, has actually put up a few wins, including the Valspar and the Sanderson Farms. But I will be on him once again here and hope he gets that 3rd win. Now moving down to Maverick Mcneilly, he's going to be our bread and butter play down here at $8,200. In terms of a course fit, he's top 10 in the field. A lot of that comes down to his distance off the tee. He is a bomber for somebody with a wiry frame. He's a solid around the green player, and you can see on Poa, one of the best players in the entire field, gaining nearly 3/4 of a stroke per round on those surfaces. And that shouldn't be a surprise. This guy went to college over here on the West Coast, was one of the best college players that we saw in all of the Division I when he was over there in the college ranks. Home surface is Poa. This is an absolute smash pick this week. So again, like we did over there with Sam Burns, let's go into some of these shots gained metrics. And you'll see for Maverick Mcneilly over his last 24 measured rounds, gaining everywhere but around the green. And historically, Maverick Mcneilly has been an extremely stout player around the green. In fact, in his first few years out here, he was really only gaining around the green. He was known a little bit as a short game specialist, somebody who was always good on Poa, but of late, he's really stepped up his ball striking. You can see gaining over 1/3 of his stroke per round off the tee. On approach, gaining a quarter of a stroke per round. If he's going to be that consistent with the ball striking, we know the type of putter that this guy is, particularly on Poa Nua, going to be an absolute smash play. And again, even though he has been losing strokes around the green of late, losing 0.2 strokes per round, that's a little bit of an outlier. He's somebody who has definitely been stout around the green for his career. But going to some of these advanced metrics, nice to see a respectable birdie or better percentage. The par 3 scoring is a little bit of a highlight there as well. Moving on a little bit further, you see driving accuracy, not really his thing, which could get him into a little bit of trouble this week, but at the very least has the driving distance to offset that. One of the longer hitters, particularly in this 8K type of range. And you can see with his approaches over 200 yards, this is yet another reason to like him. At Torrey Pines, you're going to get the highest distribution of approach shots over 200 yards that you'll get at any regular PGA Tour stop. So having a lot of success in that category, you can see him number 31 in the world right there, is also going to pay huge dividends. The putting stats, not quite as elite as what we're used to seeing. He's typically one of the better putters on tour. Again, he gains 3/4 of a stroke on these POA surfaces. But nice to see that he's been good from over 25 feet, decent from the 20 to 25 foot range. If you could start making those pesky 10 to 15 footers where he's been one of the worst players in the world of late, is going to have a very solid week. Next up, moving on to our value play, and this is going to be an extremely popular pick around the industry. That is Luke List at $7,600. Not only coming in with great form, top 10 recent form rank, which again, I don't think many people would have guessed. He's also a top 5 course fit rank. If he was coming in with bad form, probably still would have made this list as a play this week. You can see what I did there with List, just because he has a lot going for him. So let's go ahead, take a little bit of a deep dive into the metrics here on Luke List, and you can see over his last 24 measured rounds, gaining significantly everywhere but putting, which you would have guessed that. This guy is probably the worst putter on the PGA Tour, but he's gaining over half a stroke off the tee, nearly half a stroke on approach, and around the green, been pretty much the best player in the world. That is the key for success here at Torrey Pines, be an immaculate ball striker, be an amazing around the green player. He just needs to find a way to make some putts. I mean, that 0.4 shots gain loss per round is pretty drastic. It's not going to be enough to make him miss a cut. It could hold him back from finishing in the top 10, top 15 though. So it is slightly concerning there. But what there is to like about Luke List is that on his career, his best surface by far is Poa Nua, only losing 0.2 strokes per round. His baseline is a negative 0.55 shots gained per round putter. Just atrocious, right? This guy, a lot of you guys watching this could probably putt better than Luke List. The fact of the matter is, though, on these Poa Nua greens, much like a Justin Thomas, a lot of times these aggressive, less accurate putters tend to make more putts on Poa. You get a little bit of that volatility, a little bit of that bouncing left to right, and instead of missing when you have that bouncing, sometimes their putts end up going in, right? Because they're not the most accurate in that category. If we take a look at some of the other shots gained metrics here, number 23 in the world of driving distance, that is going to pay huge dividends given the 7,800 yard course over there in the south. Greens and regulation has been solid, been keeping himself out of a lot of trouble, and we saw before gaining 0.4 shots gained around the green per round. So when he's putting himself into trouble, he's also having a lot of success getting out of it. If we take a look at the putting stats, not going to look good, right? 212, 200 in the world, 121, 152. That's really the X factor for Luke List. If he goes out there this week, ends up losing, let's say 1 or 2 strokes for the entire event on the greens, probably finishes in the top 20. If he gets a little bit closer to just 1 stroke or even 0 strokes to the field lost, could very well top 5. And of course, if he has that once every season type of performance where he goes out there and actually gains on the greens, could end up taking this whole thing down. So really do like him at that kind of price tag. He will be a little bit chalky just because he's going to be an extremely popular pick this week. Anytime you have somebody coming in with form that is that good, you're going to see a lot of steam behind them. Fortunately for Luke List, he also has the course fit to go along with it, so I do believe that he's good chalk worth eating, but make sure you guys take that into consideration when you're making your lineups. All right, and now for our diamond in the rough. That is going to be Patrick Rogers. Yes, making yet another appearance here on the channel. If we liked him last week, he went out there and made a cut for us. Didn't really do anything special, but here at this type of venue, he is an absolutely perfect fit. So here at $7,100, you can see he's a top 20 course fit rank. The recent form hasn't been anything special, but actually look a little bit better. His top 5 at the Bermuda Championship was included with these shots gained metrics. But let's go ahead and do a deep dive into his metrics regardless, right? Let's see what he's been doing well over these last 24 measured rounds. And you can see down here at $7,100, the off the tee play hasn't really been there, nor has the approach play, but he's been solid around the green, which is something we haven't been able to say for Rogers for quite some time. He's a bomber by nature, more of a putting type of specialist who at harder golf courses, we've seen him struggle, right? We've seen him bleed strokes around the green, but over the years has gone slightly better year after year in that category. And if he's going to be a gainer around the green now, this guy is going to be in line for a massive 2022 season. First and foremost, this guy is extremely long off the tee. You can see Patrick Rogers, number 37 in the world in terms of driving distance. And even though he's not the most accurate driver of the golf ball, much like some of the other targets on this list, as long as you're long off the tee, you can get away with that. Some of those approach shots out of the rough can be particularly difficult, but if you're hitting a mid-iron rather than a long iron, like a lot of the other players in the field are going to be hitting, you are going to be at a severe advantage compared to them. The kicker here with Patrick Rogers is the putting on Poa Inua. This guy went to college at Stanford, right up the road. He's very familiar with Poa Inua greens. In fact, has the record for the most wins in college history. That he broke Tiger Woods' record to do so at Stanford, and a majority of those wins were over here on the West Coast as well. So not a surprise to see that he's gaining nearly a stroke per round on these greens. And if he's going to do that this week, on top of his distance off the tee, the only real X factor becomes the approach play, which, if we take a look at these metrics, doesn't look all that great. Last week was a significant gainer on approach, which is what we're used to seeing from Rogers. But a main reason why this is also still negative was the case last week as well, as all of those metrics from the Bermuda Championship, where he ended up going out there and absolutely lighting it up, aren't included. He would have gained, we would assume, close to 5-6 strokes on approach because he only missed 8 greens that entire week. So obviously had the approach play working there. He's going to tap into that approach play that we saw at the Bermuda Championship, continue to be his normal self off the tee, and of course, get anywhere close to the 0.92 shots gained on Poa that we've seen from him over the years, going to be an absolute smash play. Not somebody that I think just goes out and makes the cut like he did last week. Sure, that was an all right setup for him. That's why he was a core pick here. This is just a perfect setup. So I'm expecting a lot of positive regression there. And Patrick Rogers going to be one of my highest exposed plays in this bottom end of the 7K. And now moving on to finally our flyer pick of the week. That is going to be Sahith Theegala, who was actually one of our value picks over there at the American Express. So also somebody we're going back to here. And granted, this is also a small sample size. He is the best player on Poa Inua in the world, not just in this field, gaining 1.3 shots gained putting per round. Also somebody who went to school over there on the West Coast, went to Pepperdine, and won College Player of the Year. So similar setup to somebody like a Patrick Rogers, who's going to have a lot of inherent familiarity with these putting surfaces. And if we take a look at some of the shots gained metrics for a Sahith Theegala, it becomes an even more attractive pick. So first and foremost, the approach play has been there of late. It hasn't been anything stellar, but the fact that he's been slightly above tour average is at the very least a slight boost to his game. And his off the tee play, even though he's losing strokes on approach, he's still been himself with the driving distance. You see 90th in the field for driving distance, 90th in the world for driving distance. In this field, probably closer to number 60 in terms of his driving distance, but can really get it out there if he needs to. He's somebody who will turn it down from time to time off the tee just to try and prioritize the accuracy. What we saw him when he was in contention during the fall at the Sanderson Farms, he could get it out there 330 yards if he wants to. Really comes down to his confidence, and when Theegala has the ball striking working, he's not only somebody who's extremely aggressive, we've seen him win, and that's a huge thing, right? He hasn't won on the PGA Tour yet, but in the college ranks was a prolific winner. Somebody who didn't have any problem closing out golf tournaments. The ball striking really separated himself from the peers. And again, much like a Patrick Rogers, if he even sniffs 1.3 shots gained per round on Poa Inua, he's going to absolutely light it up, right? He has the distance to take apart at Torrey Pines. He's got the around the green play as well. He's definitely been stout in that category. Really just comes down to whether he can keep the ball in play. He has sprayed it from time to time. That's why we see him with a negative in the shots gained off the tee. But we've also seen him turn it around like at the Sanderson Farms and absolutely go out there and light it up. So really do like him this week. A few other advanced metrics we can take a look at. Greens and regulation percentage, number 71 in the world. So even though the approach stats don't look all that great, he's still hitting most of these greens. He's not putting himself in a ton of bad situations. So perhaps that shots gained approach number just a little bit misleading there for him. We also like to see that he's been good from some of the longer categories. Even though he has struggled with some of those wedges, a majority of these iron shots here at Torrey Pines are going to be from 175 to 200 or in the 200 plus yard bucket. So nice to see that he's 104 in the 200 plus, 86 in the 175 to 200 range. And with the putting, just about average, right? Hasn't really had a ton of things falling of late. But if we get him here on Poa Nua, where he has just been an absolute savant to this point of his career, I'm expecting a ton of positive regression. For a couple other guys we could look to, right? You can see some good other putters here, like a Pat Perez. He's had a lot of success at this golf course. JT Poston, Peter Malnati. The thing that separates Sahith Theegala is he has that ball striking, right? All of these other players a little bit short off the tee, not necessarily the most consistent approach players. We don't know all that much about Sahith Theegala, but if he's anything like what we saw at Pepperdale, going to have a very solid week and, of course, a very solid PGA Tour career as well. That is all I've got for the core picks, guys. Hopefully you guys have an idea of some of the people you can target for DFS this week, some of the foundational pieces to make your lineups around. But before you get out of here, make sure you guys let me know who you have winning this week's tournament. Maybe it's somebody that I had my eye on or somebody completely off my radar. But I'd love to hear from you guys and get some debate going down in the comments. I'm going to be taking JT myself, as pretty obvious with him being my spend up option for this week. But I also wouldn't be surprised to see somebody like Jon Rahm, who is clearly the best player in the world, probably the best course fit here as well, go ahead and take it down. Also, if you guys haven't already subscribed to the YouTube channel, make sure you guys go ahead and do so you don't miss any of the content dropping throughout the week. We're going to have our value picks dropping a little bit later on tonight. Of course, our fades and sleepers dropping tomorrow morning. And instead of our usual live stream Wednesday at 7 p.m., it is going to be tomorrow, Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. We'll be covering the weather there, my DFS player poll, ownership, any live questions that you guys have. So again, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of that content going forward. I really appreciate all of you guys coming by and first off, just supporting the channel here. We're over 500 subscribers now, which was a goal for me. It was really nice to be able to hit that, but now we're on our way to 1,000 and the train is not going to stop till we get there. So I appreciate you guys stopping by. Until next time, peace out and let's have ourselves a week.